So Les, we were talking about technology earlier and maybe how some of the bigger background screening firms have some type of an advantage. I mean, how do you feel about that today? Do you think that the playing field is leveled?
It's very interesting. It used to be maybe 7 to 10 years ago that the larger firms had a larger technology advantage and could do things that smaller, mid-sized firms couldn't do. That has pretty much disappeared these days. The advantages of scale in terms of technology is disappearing rapidly. As with most things involving technology, it becomes an even playing field. And what we're finding is that firms that are mid-sized firms can do the same things, in fact, sometimes better than the large firms. Some of the larger firms are on more archaic platforms that are harder to change. They're more entrenched in those platforms. It's very difficult to make an aircraft carrier change course. And so what we're finding with technology is that small or medium firms actually have technology that's as good and oftentimes better than the large firms. At the same time, what's happening with technology, which is interesting, that there's a new breed of people entering the screening industry that come from technology who view background screening as a technology process. And what's interesting about that is that there is a lack of understanding, I think, sometimes when you have folks that are purely coming from a technology viewpoint about the amount of domain expertise that's required with background screening. And as we've talked about in the past, background screening has become an area of some interest to plaintiffs and lawyers. There's a lot of litigation surrounding it, regulation, legislation. It's become a legal compliance business, and I think so the bad side of technology is that if the emphasis is entirely on technology and not legal compliance and domain knowledge and domain expertise, well, employers will suffer. And employers will find themselves in hot water much sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree. You know, software as a service in the background industry just doesn't exist. You can't purchase the software. You can't put all of the pieces of a background check in the hands of an employer or an end user and come out with a comprehensive and accurate check. I mean, there's processes and there's things behind the scenes that need to be touched by humans, that need to be touched by trained people, folks that have education. Look at NEPBS and other sources of education. There's just too much of that behind the scenes. And then two, the software may be able to deliver a product, but there's always that human element. You know, we talk about adjudication, we talk about the automation of adjudication, and now, you know, after the EEOC guidance in 2012, now we're looking at individualized assessments and things like that. So there has to be a decision there.
And that's exactly right. I mean, there are some people that have the opinion that software as a service is a model for the screening industry, and they view background screening almost as a vending machine. You put a quarter in, you get a piece of data out. And to a certain degree, you can certainly build in some artificial intelligence into the software so that if you understand, number one, the rules, for example, driving records for all 50 states. I mean, there's 50 states and there's the federal rules. Every state's an adventure. In fact, every county's an adventure. When it comes to criminal records, there's 3,200 counties. So even assuming that someone could build a lot of that into the technology, first of all, you need to understand what to build in. And secondly, even if that's built in, you still need to review and understand the final product that you're delivering to an employer, because all it takes is just one bad report, one record that shouldn't have been there, one failure to dot an I across a T, and that can lead to a class action lawsuits. And then employers who thought that they were saving a lot of money with these cheap background reports only find that they're paying millions for background reports. There's an old saying, you either pay now or you pay later. And so we do find that employers that are looking for the companies offering the shortcuts, well, they're going to find it's not a shortcut, and it's going to be more expensive than they think because of the immense amount of domain knowledge and legal environment surrounding background screening. So it's a lot more complicated than a lot of people think.